Annie Drews stood frozen in the darkened hallway of her childhood home, her wedding shoes in one hand, her phone's flashlight in the other. That melody, her dead mother's Hungarian lullaby that no one else knew, drifted through the walls like a ghost's whisper. The same song her mother hummed while braiding Annie's hair 20 years ago, before cancer stole her voice, then her life. But her mother was dead, had been for 15 years. The grandfather clock in the foyer struck midnight. In 6 hours, Annie would walk down the aisle of St. Augustine's Cathedral, where 300 of Atlanta's elite would watch her marry Donovan Pierce, the man who'd swept her off her feet with his charity work and gentle promises. Her white Vera Wang gown hung in her bedroom, waiting like a prayer answered. Yet, here she stood, trembling in her silk nightgown, following a dead woman's song. The melody grew stronger as she approached the guest room, Micah's room. Her stepmother had insisted on staying the night before the wedding, claiming it was tradition for family to surround the bride. Annie had reluctantly agreed, despite the cold distance between them since her father's death 2 years ago. Strange sounds accompanied the lullaby now, rustling fabric, whispered words, something rhythmic and wrong. Annie's hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob. The antique crystal handle her father had installed throughout the house felt like ice against her palm. She turned it slowly, silently. The door opened a crack. The moon poured through the guest room's bay windows, casting everything in silver and shadow. What Annie saw in that ethereal light would forever change the geography of her heart. Micah was in bed, her body moving in ancient rhythm. But it wasn't just Micah's presence that sent bile rising in Annie's throat. It was what she wore, her mother's wedding dress, the one Annie had searched for desperately after her mother's death, the one Micah swore had been donated to charity. The Hungarian lace glowed like betrayal in the moonlight, its pearl buttons catching the light with each movement. And beneath her, his face buried in her neck, was Donovan, Annie's fiancé, the man who'd held her as she cried on the anniversary of her father's death, who'd promised to honor her parents' memory, who'd knelt in her father's rose garden just 3 months ago and sworn she was his first and only love. The lullaby continued. Micah was humming it while she destroyed Annie's world. "God, you feel better than her," Donovan groaned, his voice thick with pleasure. 20 years old and still acts like a virgin princess. Won't even let me touch her properly until the wedding night. Micah's laugh was poison honey. My stepdaughter always was too proud, just like her father, thinking they're better than everyone. Well, look who's beneath me now. "The wedding's in 6 hours, Donovan said, not stopping his movements. "Think you can pretend to cry during the ceremony? Please. I cried perfectly at her father's funeral, didn't I? No one suspected a thing about the digitalis in his heart medication. Slow, untraceable, looked exactly like his heart condition worsening." Micah arched her back. "By our first anniversary, little Annie will have a tragic accident. All that inheritance money will be ours." "Ours?" I thought. "Did you really think I'd let you have it all? We're partners, baby. Have been since the day I pointed you toward her at that charity gala. The grieving heiress, I called her, ripe for the taking." Annie's phone slipped from her numb fingers, hitting the carpet with a soft thud. Both heads turned toward the door. Annie didn't run, didn't scream. She bent down, picked up her phone, and took 3 photos in rapid succession. The flash illuminated their shocked faces, her mother's dress, the tangle of their guilt. "Annie!" Donovan started, scrambling for sheets. She turned and walked away, her bare feet silent on the hallway runner her mother had chosen 25 years ago. Behind her, she heard crashes, panicked voices, Micah screaming her name. Annie went to her room and locked the door. Her hands steady now, she opened her laptop and uploaded the photos to 3 separate cloud services. Then she called Isaiah. Her younger brother answered on the second ring, voice groggy. "Annie? It's midnight. Don't you have a wedding? Come to the house. Bring the box from Dad's safety deposit vault, the one with the video camera." "What's wrong?" "Everything and nothing. For the first time in 2 years, Isaiah, nothing is wrong anymore. I finally see the truth." She hung up and stared at her wedding dress. 6 hours until the ceremony. 6 hours to prepare the perfect revelation. Donovan pounded on her door. "Annie, please, let me explain. It's not what you think." She put on her noise-cancelling headphones and began to write. Each word was a blade, sharpened by betrayal and aimed at hearts that deserved no mercy. She wrote about her mother's missing dress, her father's suspicious death, the midnight betrayal on the eve of her wedding. By the time Isaiah arrived at 3 a.m., Annie had her plan. He brought the video camera their father had used to record family moments, including his final message to his children, a message where he'd warned them to watch Micah carefully and protect each other from those who would hurt you for money. "What are you going to do?" Isaiah asked, his young face hardened by what she'd told him. "I'm going to get married," Annie said, applying her makeup with practiced precision. "Or at least, I'm going to attend my wedding." St. Augustine's Cathedral had never seen a more beautiful bride or a more explosive revelation. Annie walked down the aisle in her pearl-white gown, her face serene as a Madonna, her steps measured as a funeral march. Donovan waited at the altar, his relief visible when he saw her coming. Micah sat in the front row wearing a navy dress, not black, which would have been too obvious, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief that had belonged to Annie's mother. The church was packed. 300 guests from Atlanta's high society, business leaders who'd worked with her father, charity organizers who knew her mother, young philanthropists who admired Donovan's supposed humanitarian work. Father Martinez began the ceremony with practiced warmth. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." "Father," Annie interrupted, her voice carrying like a bell through the vaulted ceiling. "Before we begin, I have something to share." She turned to face the congregation, pulling a small remote from her bouquet. The large screens typically used for hymn lyrics flickered to life. "Last night," she said, her voice steady as stone, "I discovered why my stepmother insisted on staying in my childhood home. She wanted to be close to someone she loves." The first photo appeared. Micah in Annie's mother's wedding dress, on top of Donovan. Gasps rippled through the cathedral like wind through wheat. "This is my mother's dress," Annie continued, her voice never wavering. "The one Micah claimed was donated to charity after Mom died. She was wearing it while sleeping with my fiancé 6 hours before our wedding." The second photo, their faces clearly visible, guilt and shock painted across them. Screams erupted from Micah. Donovan stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. "But that's not the worst part," Annie said, clicking to the video Isaiah had uploaded. Her father's face filled the screen, gaunt from illness, but eyes still sharp. "My children," her father's recorded voice echoed through the cathedral. "If you're watching this, something has happened to me. I believe Micah is poisoning me. The digitalis in my medication, it's at levels that don't match my prescription. I've hidden evidence in my office. Please, protect yourselves. Don't let her take what I built for you." The cathedral erupted in chaos. Micah tried to run, but the doors had been locked from outside by Isaiah. Donovan fell to his knees, babbling apologies and lies in equal measure. Annie removed her engagement ring, a 4-carat diamond that had supposedly belonged to Donovan's grandmother, but was actually purchased with money he'd stolen from his last victim. She dropped it at his feet, the sound ringing like judgment in the sudden silence. "This ring is as fake as your love," she said. "As fake as your charity work, your millionaire status, your entire existence. You're a con man, Donovan Pierce, if that's even your real name. And Micah, you're not just an adulteress, you're a murderer." She walked back down the aisle, her train sweeping behind her like a queen's cape. At the doors, she turned one final time. The police are waiting outside. I suggest you all stay seated until they sort out who's under arrest and who's just a witness to the worst wedding Atlanta has ever seen." The doors opened, and Annie walked into the bright morning sun, where Taylor Averill stood beside a fleet of police cars. Her father's oldest friend, the one man who'd believed her suspicions about Micah, the one who'd helped her gather evidence these past weeks. "You did it," he said softly, his blue eyes full of admiration and something deeper. "No," Annie replied, finally allowing tears to fall. "We did it. My father, Isaiah, you, and me. We finally got justice." Behind her, the cathedral exploded with the sounds of arrests, accusations, and the complete destruction of two evil people who'd thought they could murder and steal their way to happiness. Annie Drews had lost a wedding, but gained something far more valuable: the truth, justice, and the first glimpse of a love that wouldn't betray her, standing right there in a simple black suit, offering her a handkerchief and asking nothing in return. Chapter 2. The Siege of Lies. 3 days after the wedding that wasn't, Donovan Pierce learned what desperation truly meant. Annie watched from her office window as delivery trucks lined the street below, each one carrying another piece of his pathetic campaign to win her back. Roses from Ecuador, diamonds from Antwerp, a white Bentley with a massive red bow, all the clichés of a man who confused love with acquisition. "Miss Drews," her secretary knocked softly. "There's been another delivery." "Send it back, Naomi. This one's different. It's your mother's piano." Annie's blood chilled. Her mother's 1925 Steinway Model D grand piano had vanished from their home the day after her father's funeral. Micah had claimed it was sold to pay for funeral expenses, though her father's estate could have bought 100 such pianos. She found Donovan in the lobby, standing beside the piano like a game show host presenting a prize. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his designer suit wrinkled. Good. Let him suffer a fraction of what she'd endured. "Annie, please, how did you get this?" Her voice could have frozen hell. "Micah sold it to a private collector. I tracked him down, paid triple what it was worth." He stepped toward her. "See? I'm trying to make things right." "Make things right?" Annie laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "You slept with my stepmother, the night before our wedding, in my mother's dress." The lobby had gone silent. 40 employees of her father's company, now her company, watched with barely concealed fascination. Donovan had counted on her pride, keeping her quiet. He'd miscalculated. "It was a mistake," he pleaded, dropping to his knees in front of everyone. "I was drunk. Micah seduced me. She said things about you. Made me doubt. Get up." Taylor Averill's voice cut through Donovan's performance. He'd appeared from the elevator, moving with the quiet authority that had made him her father's most trusted architect. "You're embarrassing yourself." "This doesn't concern you," Donovan snarled, still on his knees. "It does when you're trespassing on private property." Taylor nodded to security. "Mrs. Drews has a restraining order against you, filed yesterday. You're violating it by being here." Annie hadn't filed any restraining order, but she recognized Taylor's gift, a lie wrapped in legal authority, giving her an exit from this scene. "You filed a restraining order?" Donovan's mask slipped, revealing the ugly truth beneath. "You vindictive little—" Security stepped forward. Donovan scrambled to his feet, his carefully rehearsed remorse evaporating. "You'll regret this," he hissed at Annie. "You have no idea who I really am, what I'm capable of." "Neither did you," Annie replied quietly. "About me." After security removed him, Taylor approached. Up close, she could see the concern in his storm-grey eyes, the slight tension in his jaw that appeared whenever he was worried, but trying not to show it. "There's no restraining order, is there?" she asked. "There will be by end of business today. Judge Morrison owes me a favor." He paused. "Your father asked me to look after you if anything happened to him. I know you're strong enough to handle this alone, but you don't have to." Annie studied him, really looked at him for the first time since her father's death. Taylor Averill, 35 years old, widower of 3 years. His wife had died in childbirth along with their son. Her father had said Taylor was the most honorable man he'd ever met, that architecture wasn't just his profession, but his nature. He built things to last, whether buildings or friendships. Why didn't you ever tell me about Dad's suspicions about Micah? Would you have believed me? You were grieving. Micah was all you had left of family besides Isaiah. Your father made me promise to wait, to let you see the truth yourself. He said you were like your mother. You needed to reach your own conclusions. And if I hadn't, if I'd married Donovan? Taylor's jaw tightened further. Then I would have broken that promise to protect you. Before Annie could respond, her phone buzzed. Isaiah calling. You need to come home, her brother said, voice tense. Now. They found Isaiah on the front steps of their family home, blood trickling from a split lip. The front door hung off its hinges. Donovan, Isaiah said simply. He came looking for something, tore apart Dad's office. Inside, the destruction was methodical. Every drawer emptied, every file scattered, even the antique floorboards pried up in places. Her father's office, his sanctuary, desecrated. What was he looking for? Taylor asked, already knowing the answer. Evidence, Annie said. Dad's real evidence about the poisoning. Did he find it? Isaiah smiled through his swollen lip. Number. Because I moved it months ago. It's in a safety deposit box, along with Dad's real will, the one Micah doesn't know about. Annie hugged her brother, this 18-year-old who'd become a man too soon. We need to call the police. Already did, Isaiah said. They're looking for him. That night, Annie couldn't sleep. She stood in her father's ruined office, trying to restore order to chaos. Taylor found her there at 2 a.m., sorting papers by lamplight. You should rest, he said, handing her a cup of tea. I can't. This is all that's left of him, and Donovan... Her voice broke. Taylor knelt beside her, gathering scattered photographs. One showed her father, mother, and a 5-year-old Annie at the beach, building sandcastles. Another captured her parents' wedding day, her mother radiant in the dress Micah had defiled. Your father's legacy isn't in these papers, Taylor said gently. It's in you, in Isaiah, in the company he built, the lives he touched. Donovan can't destroy that. He's not done trying, Annie said. He'll come back, him and Micah both. They want the money too badly to give up. Then we'll be ready. We? Taylor met her eyes. I made a promise to your father, but more than that. He paused, choosing words carefully. I care about what happens to you, Annie. I have for a long time. The air between them shifted, charged with possibility, but Annie wasn't ready, not yet. Her heart was still too raw, trust too fragile. Tell me about the evidence, she said, changing the subject. What exactly did Dad leave? Taylor understood her deflection, accepted it. Financial records showing Micah's suspicious purchases of digitalis, security footage from the pharmacy, a recording of her talking to someone about increasing the dose, and something else, evidence that Donovan isn't who he claims to be. What do you mean? Your father hired a private investigator 6 months ago. Donovan Pierce doesn't exist before 2018. Before that, he was Daniel Patterson, convicted of fraud in Miami. He served 2 years, got out, changed his name, and started hunting for wealthy targets. Annie absorbed this, another layer of betrayal. And Micah knew? The investigator thinks she's the one who brought him here, pointed him at you. They've been working together from the beginning. The next morning brought new horrors. Annie arrived at the company to find reporters everywhere. Someone had leaked the wedding footage to the media. Heiress exposes cheating groom at altar, screamed the headlines. Photos of Micah in her mother's dress were trending on social media. But worse was the counter-narrative Donovan was spinning. He'd given an exclusive interview claiming Annie was mentally unstable, that she'd fabricated everything out of jealousy over his friendship with her stepmother. He painted himself as the victim of a spoiled rich girl's tantrum. "He's trying to destroy your credibility," Taylor said, watching the interview in her office. "If he can convince people you're unstable, it'll be harder to prove the murder allegations against Micah. Then we need to move faster." Annie turned to Isaiah. "Get Dad's evidence. All of it. We're going to the FBI today." "Annie," Taylor warned, "once you start this, there's no going back. Micah will fight with everything she has." "Good," Annie said, steel in her voice. "So will I." That afternoon, as they prepared to leave for the FBI office, Annie's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, stepdaughter." Micah's voice purred through the speaker. "I have nothing to say to you." "Oh, but you'll want to hear this. I have something that belongs to you, or should I say, someone." Annie's blood froze. She looked around the room. Taylor was there, Isaiah. "Check on Naomi," she whispered to Taylor. He ran from the room. "She's pretty, your secretary," Micah continued. "So loyal, refusing to tell me where you keep your father's evidence, but everyone breaks eventually. If you hurt her, meet me tonight, alone. The old warehouse on Riverside Drive. Bring all of your father's evidence, or sweet Naomi learns what happens to people who inconvenience me. Just like your father did." The line went dead. Taylor returned, face grim. "Naomi never came back from lunch. Security footage shows her being forced into a van." Annie stood, decision made. "Call the FBI, tell them everything. I'm going to that warehouse." "Not alone," Taylor said firmly. "She said—" "I don't care what she said. Your father asked me to protect you. I'm not letting you walk into a trap alone." Isaiah stepped forward. "Neither am I." Annie looked at these two men, her brother, blood of her blood, and Taylor, who'd been silently guarding her for years. Maybe she wasn't alone after all. Maybe she never had been. "Then we go together," she said, "and we end this tonight." Chapter 3. The Blood Testimony. The warehouse squatted against the Atlanta skyline, like a wound against the sunset, its broken windows watching Annie's approach with dead eyes. She entered alone, as demanded, but Taylor and Isaiah waited in the shadows outside with FBI agents. The wire taped to her ribs felt like armor made of hope. Every word Micah said would be recorded, transmitted, preserved as evidence. The interior reeked of rust and decay. Moonlight leaked through holes in the roof, creating pools of silver among the shadows. Annie found them in the center of the vast space, Naomi tied to a chair, duct tape across her mouth, and Micah standing behind her with something glinting in her hand. A syringe. "Punctual as always," Micah said, her voice echoing. "Your father's greatest weakness, his predictability. Every morning the same breakfast, every evening the same medications. Made it so easy to add a little extra to his routine. Let Naomi go. This is between us." "Us?" Micah laughed. "There is no us, darling. There never was. You were just an obstacle between me and what I deserved. Do you know what it's like, spending 15 years playing nursemaid to a dying woman, then stepmother to her brat? You were my mother's nurse." Annie had never known this. "Oh yes, hired to care for her in those final months. I watched her waste away, listened to her talk about her precious Annie, her devoted husband. All that money, and for what? They were going to waste it on charity, on you, on everyone but the person who actually earned it by enduring their sanctimonious presence." The syringe glinted as Micah pressed it against Naomi's neck. "Your mother was supposed to die quicker, but she was stubborn, just like your father, just like you. You killed my mother too. Morphine overdose. Everyone expected it. Terminal cancer patient. The pain unbearable. One night I simply helped her along. Your father never suspected. He was so grateful for my compassion during his wife's final days that he married me 2 years later." Annie's hands shook, but she kept her voice steady. The FBI was recording everything. "And Donovan, where does he fit?" "My nephew," Micah said casually, the revelation landing like a bomb. "My sister's boy. Changed his name so many times running from his cons that even he forgets who he really is sometimes. I brought him here specifically for you. Groomed him with everything you'd want. Charitable, handsome, patient. The perfect trap for a grieving daughter." "Your nephew?" Annie tasted bile. "I was going to marry your nephew." "Keep it in the family, as they say." Micah's smile was vicious. The plan was simple. Marry you, wait a year, tragic accident. Maybe a car crash, maybe a fall downstairs. Donovan would inherit as your widower. We'd split the money and finally get what we deserved for all those years of smiling and pretending to care. Where is he now? Running, probably. The coward lost his nerve after your little church performance. But he'll be back. He always comes crawling back to Auntie Micah. Annie took a step forward. "The FBI knows everything. They have my father's evidence. You're done, Micah." "Evidence?" Micah's laugh was shrill. "You mean those papers Isaiah hid? I found them weeks ago, destroyed them. There's nothing linking me to your parents' deaths." "You're wrong." Isaiah's voice rang out as he stepped from the shadows, despite the plan for him to stay hidden. In his hands was a laptop. "Dad was smarter than you thought." Micah's hand tightened on the syringe. "Stay back." "He uploaded everything to the cloud," Isaiah continued, standing just outside of lunging distance. "Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. It's all backed up, replicated across servers. You destroyed paper, Micah. You can't destroy the truth." "You're lying." Taylor emerged from another shadow, phone in hand. "The FBI has been listening to every word. They have your confession about murdering Mrs. Drews, Mr. Drews, and conspiracy to murder Annie. It's over." For a moment, Micah's mask finally cracked completely. The sophisticated stepmother vanished, revealing the monster beneath, desperate, feral, cornered. Then she smiled. "If I'm going down," she said, raising the syringe, "I'm taking someone with me." She plunged it toward Naomi's neck. Annie didn't think. She launched herself forward, catching Micah's wrist inches from Naomi's skin. They crashed to the concrete, wrestling for the syringe. Micah was stronger than she looked, fighting with the fury of someone with nothing left to lose. The syringe skittered across the floor. Micah's hands found Annie's throat, squeezing with murderous intent. "You should have just died quietly like your parents." Annie's vision started to blur. Then suddenly the weight was gone. Taylor had pulled Micah off, pinning her arms behind her back as FBI agents flooded the warehouse. "Annie!" Isaiah was beside her, helping her sit up. Her throat burned, but she was alive. Agent Harrison, the lead investigator, surveyed the scene with grim satisfaction. "Micah Hancock, you're under arrest for murder, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder." The list went on. Micah said nothing, her face returning to that calm mask even as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. But her eyes promised this wasn't over. "Wait!" Annie croaked, voice rough from the strangling. "Test that syringe. I want to know what she was going to use." Hours later, at the FBI office, the results came back. Concentrated digitalis. The same poison that had killed her father, in a dose that would have stopped Naomi's heart in minutes. "She kept a trophy," Agent Harrison said. "Killers often do. This syringe will help convict her." Annie sat in the interview room, having given her statement 3 times. Taylor hadn't left her side, his presence steady and comforting. Isaiah worked with tech specialists to retrieve all their father's digital evidence. "There's something else," Agent Harrison said, returning with a file. "We picked up Donovan Pierce, or should I say Clint Hancock, at the airport. He was trying to flee to Costa Rica. Clint Hancock, his real name. Micah's nephew, as she said. But here's what she didn't mention. This isn't their first time. We've linked them to 3 other suspicious deaths over the past decade. Elderly spouses who died mysteriously, leaving everything to their younger partners who then disappeared. Annie felt sick. How many people have they killed? We're still investigating. But Annie, you stopped them. You and your family. No one else is going to die because of them. As dawn broke over Atlanta, Annie stood outside the FBI building with Taylor and Isaiah. Micah was in custody. Donovan, Clint, was in custody. The nightmare was ending. You did it, Taylor said softly. Your father would be so proud. We did it, Annie corrected, looking at both men. I couldn't have survived this alone. Isaiah, exhausted but victorious, hugged his sister. Mom and Dad can rest now. Later that morning, Annie returned to her father's office, still destroyed from Donovan's rampage. She began cleaning again, but this time with purpose, not desperation. Taylor arrived with coffee and contractors. I thought you might want to restore it, he said. Not to what it was, but to something new. Your father always said buildings should evolve, not just endure. Annie watched him direct the contractors with quiet efficiency, his architectural mind already envisioning transformation from destruction. There was something deeply attractive about his competence, his calm strength. Taylor, she said suddenly, why did my father really ask you to watch over me? He paused, considering his words. He knew I cared about you, had for years. But you were so young, and then I lost Beth and our son, and I couldn't. Your father said to wait, to be there when you needed me, but never to push, never to take advantage of your grief. And now? Now you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You don't need my protection, Annie, but I'd like to earn your trust, if you'll let me, as a friend first. Anything else? That's your choice, in your time. Before Annie could respond, her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Don't answer, Taylor started, but she'd already accepted the call. You think you've won, Micah's voice calling from jail, but I know things about your mother's death that would destroy you. Things your father never knew. Meet with me, alone, or I'll make sure the whole world knows what really happened the night she died. The line went dead. Annie looked at Taylor, then at the construction crew rebuilding her father's sanctuary. She's lying, Taylor said. It's manipulation. Maybe, but what if she's not? What if there's more to my mother's death? Isaiah appeared in the doorway, laptop in hand, face pale. Annie, you need to see this. I was going through Dad's cloud files, and I found something. A video from Mum's hospital room the night she died. Dad had a hidden camera recording everything. On the screen, their mother lay dying, machines beeping steadily. Micah entered, checked that she was alone, then approached with a syringe. But then their mother's eyes opened. I know what you are, their mother whispered on the recording. I've known all along. Micah froze. You're delirious from the morphine. I changed my will yesterday. You get nothing. My husband gets nothing. Everything goes into trust for my children until they're 21. You can kill me, Micah, but you'll never touch my babies or my money. Their mother smiled, even as Micah injected the fatal dose. I already won. The video ended with their mother's last words. Tell Annie. The mockingbird knows the lullaby's secret. Annie stared at the screen, her mother's final message echoing in her mind. The mockingbird, her mother's pet name for her because she could mimic any song. The lullaby Micah had been humming that night. She knew, Annie whispered. Mum knew she was going to die, and she protected us. The trust, that's why Micah had to wait, had to marry Dad, had to play the long game. There's more, Isaiah said, pulling up financial records. The trust Mum set up? It has a provision. If any beneficiary is convicted of a crime against the family, their portion gets redistributed. Micah must have known about it. That's why she needed you to die in an accident after marrying Donovan, so he could inherit as your widower without triggering the provision. Annie felt a strange peace settling over her. Her mother had fought even while dying, had protected them from beyond the grave. I need to see Micah, she decided, one last time, to tell her that Mom won, that she knew everything. Not alone, Taylor said firmly. No, Annie agreed, looking at the two men who'd become her foundation. Never alone again. Chapter 4. The Calculated Response. The visiting room at Fulton County Jail smelled of industrial disinfectant and despair, a combination that seemed to seep into Annie's clothes within seconds of entering. Micah sat behind reinforced glass, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame. Without her designer clothes and carefully applied makeup, she looked smaller, older, ordinary evil instead of sophisticated malice. No lawyers, Micah asked through the phone, her voice tinny through the connection. How refreshingly naive. Annie placed a tablet against the glass, pressing play on her mother's final video. Watched Micah's face as her mother's words echoed through the tiny speaker. I know what you are. You can kill me, Micah, but you'll never touch my babies or my money. For the first time since Annie had known her, Micah looked genuinely shocked. She knew, Annie said simply. My mother knew everything, and she still won. Micah's composure cracked like ice in spring. That's impossible. She was barely conscious those last days. She was conscious enough to change her will, to set up the trust, to ensure you'd never get a penny unless you played by rules you couldn't win. Annie leaned forward. You killed her for nothing. You killed my father for nothing. You destroyed lives for absolutely nothing. Where did you get that video? My father recorded everything in those final days. He suspected something was wrong but couldn't prove it. Now we can. Annie stood to leave. Enjoy life in prison, Micah. However long that is. Wait. Micah's desperation bled through. Don't you want to know the whole truth about your precious mother? Annie paused at the door. I know the truth. She was dying of cancer, and you murdered her anyway. There's nothing else to know. She had an affair. The words hung in the air like poison. Annie turned slowly. You're lying. 6 months before her diagnosis, with Taylor Averill's brother, Christopher. Your father never knew. But I did. I saw them together at the hospital when she'd claimed to be at chemotherapy. She was meeting him. Annie's world tilted. Taylor's brother had died in Afghanistan 8 years ago. The timeline would mean, you're trying to manipulate me. Am I? Ask Taylor about the letters. Christopher wrote her dozens. She kept them hidden in the piano bench, the same piano your dear Donovan returned to you. Micah smiled, victorious even in defeat. Your sainted mother wasn't so pure after all. Annie left without another word, but the seed of doubt was planted. She found Taylor at her father's company, reviewing architectural plans for the new children's hospital her father had commissioned before his death. He looked up when she entered, immediately reading her distress. What did she say? Tell me about Christopher. Taylor's face went still. My brother? What about him? Did he know my mother? A long pause. Too long. Yes, they were friends. Just friends. Taylor set down his pencil carefully. Annie, what did Micah tell you? The truth, apparently. That my mother had an affair with your brother. It wasn't... Taylor stopped, choosing words carefully. It wasn't what Micah is making it sound like. So, it was something? Taylor gestured for her to sit. His grey eyes held a pain she'd never seen before. Christopher fell in love with your mother. It was one-sided. He wrote her letters, pursued her, but she loved your father completely. She tried to help Chris, to counsel him through his depression, his PTSD from his first deployment. She was trying to save him, not betray your father. But Micah said, Micah saw what she wanted to see. Chris meeting your mother at the hospital because he was in psychiatric treatment there, not because they were having an affair. Your mother was volunteering in the mental health ward. She never told your father because Chris begged her not to. He was ashamed of his condition. Annie studied Taylor's face, searching for deception. The letters, love letters from Chris, yes, but never answered, never reciprocated. Your mother kept them because she blamed herself when he re-enlisted and died in Afghanistan. She thought if she'd done more, helped more. Taylor's voice roughened. It destroyed her, that guilt. Maybe it even made her cancer worse, the stress of it. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't my secret to tell, and because I was afraid you'd think I was like him, another Averill brother inappropriately fixated on a Druze woman. The comparison stung because it held a grain of truth. Are you? No. Taylor met her eyes directly. I care about you, Annie. Have for a long time, but not like Chris did with your mother. He was obsessed, desperate, unwell. What I feel is patient, willing to wait forever if necessary. And if you never feel the same, I'll still be honored to be your friend. Before Annie could respond, Isaiah burst in. We have a problem. Donovan made bail. What? How? Some high-powered lawyer from Miami. And Annie, he's disappeared, cut his ankle monitor and ran. That night, Annie couldn't sleep. She sat at her mother's piano, lifting the bench seat. Inside, wrapped in silk, were the letters. Christopher's handwriting was erratic, passionate, pleading. Elena, you are the sun in my darkness. Without you, I have no reason to continue. Please, just one word of encouragement. One sign that I matter to you as you matter to me. I ship out tomorrow. If I die, it will be with your name on my lips. And at the bottom, one letter in her mother's hand. Never sent. Christopher, you need help I cannot give. Professional help. I care about you as a friend, as Taylor's brother, but I cannot be what you need. I love my husband. I love my children. Please, for your family's sake and mine, get help. I'm begging you. Elena. Annie was crying when Taylor found her, surrounded by the letters. She tried to save him, Annie whispered. She tried to save everyone. It's who she was. Taylor sat beside her on the piano bench, careful not to touch her. Chris was sick, Annie. Bipolar disorder complicated by PTSD. He refused medication, refused therapy. Your mother was his last hope, and when she couldn't reciprocate his feelings, he re-enlisted to die. Suicide by combat, the psychiatrist called it. They sat in silence, the weight of old pain and new understanding between them. I'm sorry, Annie finally said, for suspecting you, for believing Micah even for a moment. She's good at finding wounds and pouring salt in them. It's how she survived this long. Annie's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, then recognized the area code. Miami. Hello, beautiful. Donovan's voice was different, harder, the mask completely gone. Miss me? Where are you? Closer than you think. Look outside. Annie moved to the window. A black sedan sat across the street, engine running. I lost everything because of you, Donovan continued. My identity, my future, my freedom. But mostly, I lost Aunt Micah. She's all I had, the only person who ever gave a damn about me. She used you like she used everyone else. She saved me. His voice cracked. When my parents threw me out for being a disappointment, she took me in, taught me how to survive, how to take what the world owed us. The world doesn't owe you anything, Clint. Don't call me that. Clint is dead. Donovan is dead. You killed every version of me except the real one. the one Micah warned me never to let out. The sedan's door opened. A figure stepped out, something in his hand. "Run," Taylor said urgently, pulling Annie from the window just as glass shattered. The Molotov cocktail exploded against the piano, flames erupting across Annie's mother's last gift. More bottles followed, fire spreading with terrifying speed through the old house. "Isaiah!" Annie screamed. "Already out!" Her brother's voice came from the hallway. "Backstairs, now!" They ran through smoke and heat, Taylor leading them toward safety. Behind them, Annie heard Donovan laughing through the phone she still clutched. "Everything you love burns tonight, Annie. Your house, your memories, your future. Just like you burned mine." They burst out the back door as fire trucks wailed in the distance. Annie turned to watch her childhood home consumed by flames, 20 years of memories turning to ash. But her family was safe. Isaiah, coughing but whole. Taylor, singed but standing. They were alive. "You failed," she said into the phone. "Again. This is just the beginning. I learned patience from Aunt Micah, how to play the long game. You'll never be safe, never be free. I'll take everything from you, piece by piece, until you beg me to end it." "Try," Annie said, surprising herself with her steadiness. "My mother faced death with grace. My father faced murder with dignity. You think fire and threats will break me? I'm a Druze. We don't break, we build." She hung up and turned to Taylor and Isaiah. "We end this. Not the law, not the FBI. Us." "Annie," Taylor started, "he wants to play the long game." "Fine. But he doesn't know what Micah never understood. My parents didn't just leave me money. They left me their strength, their intelligence, their network. And now I have something they didn't." "What?" Isaiah asked. Annie looked at the burning house, then at the two men beside her. "I have you, both of you, and together we're going to destroy Donovan Pierce so completely that he'll wish he'd never heard the name Druze." Fire reflected in her eyes as she made the promise. Behind them, her childhood home collapsed, but Annie didn't look back. She was done looking back. The war had begun. Chapter 5. Uncovering Depths. The law offices of Morrison, Kincaid and Associates occupied the top floor of Atlanta's Sovereign Tower, all glass and gravity-defying angles that Taylor had designed 5 years ago when the world still made sense. Annie sat in the conference room, surrounded by bankers' boxes of her father's papers salvaged from their burned home. Most were water-damaged from the firefighters' efforts, but Isaiah had been smart. Everything important was digital, backed up in triplicate. "Your father was paranoid," said James Morrison, her father's attorney and oldest friend. "Thank God for that." He spread documents across the mahogany table. 3 weeks before his death, he restructured everything. The company, the estates, the investments, all in an ironclad trust. Micah can't touch it, even if she somehow beats the murder charges. "She won't beat them," Annie said firmly. "No, she won't. But that's not why you're here." Morrison pulled out a red folder marked with her father's personal seal. He left instructions that this was only to be opened if both he and your mother were gone, and only if you suspected foul play. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a key. "My dearest Annie." The letter began in her father's precise handwriting. "If you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I've suspected Micah for months now, but suspicion isn't proof. The key belongs to a storage unit. Morrison has the address. Inside, you'll find everything I've gathered. But more importantly, you'll find the truth about who Micah really is. She's not just a killer, my darling. She's something worse. She's part of a network, a group that targets wealthy families. They share information, techniques, victims. Donovan isn't her nephew, he's her accomplice, trained by the same people. I hired private investigators across the country. What they found will horrify you, but you need to know. You need to understand the size of what you're fighting. Be careful, my brave girl. Be smart. And remember, your mother and I loved you more than life itself. Dad, you. Annie stared at the key. A network. Morrison nodded grimly. Your father showed me some preliminary findings. At least 12 suspicious deaths over the past 15 years, all following the same pattern. Nurse or caregiver marries patient or patient's spouse, inheritance follows, then death. And the authorities? Different states, different jurisdictions. Nobody connected the dots until your father started looking. That afternoon, Taylor and Isaiah accompanied Annie to the storage unit in an industrial district outside Atlanta. The space was climate-controlled, meticulously organized, her father's mind preserved in filing systems. Jesus, Isaiah breathed, taking in the walls covered with photographs, newspaper clippings, and connection webs drawn in her father's hand. It looked like a conspiracy theorist's dream, except everything was real. Annie approached the central board. Photos of Micah through the years, but with different names. Michelle Hartford in Seattle, Marina Blackwood in Denver, Margaret Chen in Phoenix. Same face, different hair, different identities. She's like a chameleon, Taylor said, studying the transformations. No, Annie corrected, finding a medical report. She's trained. Look at this. She has real nursing credentials from 15 years ago, before any of the suspicious deaths. She learned how to heal so she could learn how to kill. Isaiah was at another board. Annie, look at this. Photos of young people, all attractive, all with that same predatory emptiness in their eyes that Donovan had. Names and locations were written beneath each photo. The nephews and nieces, Annie whispered, the younger accomplices. She found Donovan, Clint, in 3 different iterations, each time with a different name, a different wealthy target, a different city. They're all connected through this, Taylor said, holding up a business card. Comfort Care Solutions. It's supposed to be a healthcare staffing agency. Annie took the card. The address was in Miami. Her phone rang. Agent Harrison. Annie, we have a problem. Donovan's lawyer got Micah a new hearing, some technicality about the arrest. She could be out on bail by tomorrow. That's impossible, she confessed. Her lawyer's claiming coercion, says you set her up, that she was defending herself. And Annie? The judge assigned to the case just recused himself. His replacement is Judge Patricia Chen. Annie's blood chilled. She looked at the board. Chen. Like Margaret Chen, one of Micah's identities in Phoenix. What? I'll call you back. She searched through her father's files frantically until she found it, a family tree he'd constructed. Patricia Chen, appointed to the bench 2 years ago, was Margaret Chen's daughter. They have people everywhere, Annie said, the scope of it overwhelming. Judges, lawyers, doctors. Then we can't trust the system, Taylor said quietly. We have to beat them another way. That night, Annie sat in Taylor's apartment, her temporary refuge since the fire. He'd given her his bedroom, taking the couch despite her protests. Isaiah was in the guest room, having refused to leave her side since Donovan's threat. She couldn't sleep, so she studied the files. Pattern after pattern emerged. The network always chose victims with estranged families, people whose deaths wouldn't be questioned too hard. They were patient, sometimes taking years to position themselves. Except with us, she said aloud. Taylor appeared in the doorway, 2 cups of tea in hand. Even at 2 a.m., he looked put together, though she could see the exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. What do you mean? My parents weren't estranged from anyone. They had friends, business associates, people who'd notice if something was wrong. So why target them? Taylor sat beside her on the floor, surrounded by papers. Maybe they got greedy. Your father's wealth was significant. Or maybe... Annie pulled out a file she'd overlooked. Oh my God. It was a patient record from the hospital where her mother had been treated. The attending physician who'd recommended Micah as a private nurse, Dr. Patricia Chen. She was placed deliberately, The judge, she's not Micah's daughter. She's part of the network. They've been planning this for over 15 years. Annie, my mother's cancer was real, but the opportunity it presented. They saw a dying woman with a wealthy husband and young children, the perfect long-term mark. Taylor's hand found hers. We'll stop them. How? They have judges, doctors, probably police. Donovan's out there somewhere. Micah will be free tomorrow. How do we fight something this big? The same way your father did. Methodically, carefully, we document everything. And then? Then we give it to someone they can't buy or threaten. The media, all of it, all at once, make it so big they can't contain it. Annie looked at him, this steady, brilliant man who'd stood by her through everything. Why do you care so much? And don't say it's because of my father's request. Taylor was quiet for a long moment. The day I met you, you were 17. Your father brought you to a construction site, the children's hospital. You were wearing a hard hat too big for your head, asking questions about load-bearing walls and foundation depths. So serious, so smart. I thought you were remarkable. I was a child. You were. Which is why I kept my distance, only saw you at formal events, only spoke when spoken to. But I watched you grow up, Annie. Watched you become this fierce, brilliant woman. When Beth died, when I lost everything, your father was there for me. But it was thoughts of you that kept me going. Not in an inappropriate way. Just knowing that there was still good in the world, still people worth protecting. And now? Now you're not 17. Now you're not grieving. Now you're this warrior goddess taking on monsters and I... He stopped, pulled back. I'm saying too much. You have enough to deal with without... Annie kissed him. It wasn't desperate or passionate. It was certain, like coming home after a long journey. When they pulled apart, Taylor's eyes were wide with surprise. I can't promise anything, Annie said. Not with everything happening. I'm not asking for promises, I'm just asking to stand beside you, however you need me. A crash from the living room shattered the moment. They ran out to find Isaiah at the window, blood running down his arm. He was here, Isaiah gasped. Donovan, he threw something. A brick lay on the floor, a note tied to it. Judge Chen sends her regards. See you in court, or maybe I'll see you tonight. Sweet dreams. Taylor was already on the phone with building security. Annie grabbed towels for Isaiah's arm, her mind racing. He knows where we are. He has help from the judge. We're not safe anywhere. Then we stop playing defense, Isaiah said through gritted teeth as Annie bandaged his arm. We have all of Dad's evidence. We have the network mapped out. Let's use it. How? Her brother smiled, looking far older than 18. Remember when Dad taught us chess? He always said the best defense is a devastating offense, Annie finished. She looked at the two men who'd become her world. Taylor, steady and brilliant. Isaiah, young but fierce. Tomorrow, Micah gets out on bail. She'll come for us or send Donovan. They think we're victims. She picked up her father's files, her mother's strength flowing through her veins. Let's show them what the Drews family does to predators. Chapter 6. The Serpent's Nest. Judge Patricia Chen's courtroom was a theater of lies and everyone knew their parts. Annie sat in the gallery, watching Micah's new lawyer, a sharp-faced man from Miami named Victor Castellanos, argue for bail reduction. He painted Micah as a grieving widow, traumatized by her stepdaughter's vindictive persecution. My client has deep ties to the community, Castellanos said smoothly. She poses no flight risk and certainly no danger to anyone. Agent Harrison stood to object, but Judge Chen cut him off with a raised hand. I've heard enough. Bail is set at $50,000. The gavel came down like a gunshot. Annie watched Micah's eyes find hers across the courtroom. The older woman smiled, a predator recognizing prey. But Annie didn't look away. She'd spent the morning planting seeds of her own. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Annie had made sure they'd be there, tipping off 3 investigative journalists about the hearing. Taylor and Isaiah flanked her as microphones thrust forward. "Miss Drews, how do you feel about your stepmother's release?" Annie had prepared for this moment. "I trust the justice system to reveal the truth. In fact, I have something to share with all of you." She pulled out her phone, connected it to a portable speaker. Her father's voice filled the air, that final video message playing for the world to hear. "I believe Micah is poisoning me." Reporters went silent, recording everything. Judge Chen, exiting the courthouse, stopped dead when she heard the recording. "There's more evidence," Annie announced. "My father discovered a network of killers targeting wealthy families across the country. I'll be releasing everything to the press tomorrow at noon." "That's slander!" Castellanos pushed through the crowd. "We'll sue." "Truth is an absolute defense against slander," Taylor said calmly. "We have documents, recordings, proof, all of which will be public in 18 hours. Annie saw the panic flash across Judge Chen's face before the woman hurried to her car. "You just declared war," Isaiah whispered as they walked away. "No," Annie corrected. "I just let them know I'm not afraid anymore." That afternoon, Annie sat in a Miami FBI field office, having flown down with Agent Harrison and a team of federal investigators. They'd taken her father's evidence directly to the source, Comfort Care Solutions. The building was abandoned, cleared out overnight. "They knew we were coming," Harrison said, frustrated. But Annie had expected this. While the FBI searched the empty offices, she studied the building itself. Taylor had taught her to read structures, to understand what they revealed. "There!" She pointed to scratches on the floor. "Heavy furniture was dragged out recently. And look at the walls, outlines where pictures hung. They left in a hurry. They could be anywhere by now." "No," Annie said, finding what she was looking for, a crumpled receipt wedged behind a radiator. "They're at the Marina Bay Hotel, room 1247. Harrison stared at her. "How could you possibly—" "This receipt is from their restaurant, dated yesterday, and there's a room number written on it." Within an hour, the FBI had surrounded the hotel. Annie waited in the command vehicle, listening through radio chatter as agents moved in. "FBI, open up!" Sounds of splintering wood, shouts, confusion. Then Harrison's voice. "We've got them." 5 individuals, dozens of boxes of documents they were trying to burn. Annie felt a flutter of victory, but it died when Harrison returned. Micah wasn't there, neither was Donovan. But the others? Lower-level operators. They're all lawyering up, claiming they're just healthcare workers. That evening, Annie sat in her Miami hotel room, exhausted. Taylor was back in Atlanta protecting Isaiah, leaving her feeling exposed despite the FBI protection. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "You think you're clever," Micah's voice was venomous. "Destroying my network, my life's work." "Where are you, Micah?" "Close enough to watch you. That blue dress is lovely, by the way." Annie moved away from the window, fear spiking. "The FBI can't protect you from what's coming. You want to know the truth about your mother's death, the whole truth. I know you killed her. I ended her suffering. But I'm talking about before that. About why she really got cancer." Annie's hand tightened on the phone. "Cancer isn't something you cause, isn't it? Didn't you ever wonder why a healthy 35-year-old woman suddenly developed aggressive pancreatic cancer? No family history, no risk factors. You're lying. Check your father's files, the ones he hid even from that storage unit. Check the safety deposit box at First National, the one he opened the week before he died. Box 472. The key is in your mother's piano bench. Oh wait, that burned, didn't it?" The line went dead. Annie immediately called Taylor. "She knows about another safety deposit box. Says the key was in the piano bench." "I have it," Taylor said immediately. "I grabbed it during the fire, thought it might be important. It's in my apartment safe." Can you? I'm already on my way to the bank. Isaiah's coming with me. We'll video call you when we open it. An hour later, Annie watched through her phone screen as Taylor opened the safety deposit box. Inside was a single manila envelope marked with her father's handwriting, "The Beginning." Taylor opened it carefully. Medical records spilled out, her mother's, but from years before her diagnosis. "These are from a clinical trial," Taylor said, reading. "An experimental preventive treatment for women with BRCA gene mutations. Your mother participated because her grandmother had died of ovarian cancer." "I never knew about this." Isaiah grabbed one of the papers. "Annie, look at the administering physician, Dr. Patricia Chen. And the pharmaceutical company running the trial," Taylor added. "Comfort Care Solutions, before they became a staffing agency." Annie felt the world tilt. They gave my mother cancer? The trial was shut down after multiple participants developed aggressive cancers. It was hushed up, settlements paid. But your mother's case came years later, so it wasn't connected. "They knew," Annie whispered. "When her cancer manifested, Patricia Chen knew it was from the trial. She sent Micah to be her nurse, knowing my mother would die, knowing my father would be vulnerable." "It's all here," Taylor said, still reading. "Internal memos discussing potential targets from failed trial. Your mother is listed. They planned this before you were even born, Annie." Annie ran to the bathroom and vomited, the evil of it overwhelming. They hadn't just killed her parents, they'd caused their suffering from the very beginning. When she emerged, her phone was ringing. "Agent Harrison, we have a problem. Judge Chen just issued a warrant for your arrest." "What? On what grounds?" "Harassment, stalking, defamation. She's claiming you're orchestrating a conspiracy against her and Micah." "Annie, you need to come back to Atlanta immediately. My hands are tied if there's a warrant." "It's a trap." "I know, but if you don't appear, you'll be a fugitive. That gives them even more power." Annie made her decision. "I'm coming back. But first I'm holding that press conference. 3 a.m. outside the FBI building. Can you guarantee my safety until then?" "I'll have every available agent there." "Good, because I'm about to burn their entire network to the ground." She called Taylor next. "Get everything to the reporters. Every document, every connection, everything about the clinical trial. Include Judge Chen's involvement." "Annie, if you do this, they'll come for you with everything they have." "Let them come. I'm done being hunted. It's time they knew what it felt like to be prey." That night, Annie stood before 30 reporters and 6 news cameras. Behind her, the FBI building loomed like a promise of justice. She wore her mother's pearl necklace, salvaged from the fire, and her father's watch. 20 years ago, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the night air. A pharmaceutical company called Comfort Care Solutions conducted an illegal clinical trial that gave multiple women, including my mother, fatal cancers. When she developed cancer years later, they saw an opportunity. She laid out everything: the network, the murders, Judge Chen's involvement, Micah's real identity, the dozen families destroyed for money. "This is my father's evidence," she said, as Taylor and Isaiah distributed copies to every reporter. "This is the truth they killed to hide." Behind the crowd, Annie saw a figure watching. Donovan, his face twisted with rage. He met her eyes, drew his finger across his throat, then vanished into the shadows. "I know they're watching," Annie said into the cameras. "Micah, Judge Chen, all of them. So let me be clear, I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not running. You want me? Come and get me." As she spoke, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A single word: "Tonight." Annie smiled grimly. Good. She was ready. The war would end where it began, in her father's house, in the ashes of her childhood. But this time, she wouldn't be the one burning. Chapter 7. The Final Stand. The ruins of Annie's childhood home looked like a mouthful of broken teeth against the dawn sky, blackened timbers reaching toward heaven like accusations. She stood in what had been her father's office, ash crunching under her feet. The FBI had wanted to put her in protective custody after the press conference, but Annie had refused. She knew Micah and Donovan would come here, to the place where everything started and where her parents' ghosts still lingered. Taylor and Isaiah had fought her decision, but she'd convinced them with 4 words: "This ends today." Now Taylor was positioned in the old garage with FBI surveillance equipment. Isaiah waited in the garden shed with Agent Harrison and a tactical team. And Annie stood alone in the ruins, bait for monsters. Her phone showed 6:47 a.m. The morning news would break in 13 minutes with her revelations. Judge Chen had already been arrested at her home, caught trying to destroy evidence. The network was collapsing, which meant Micah and Donovan had nothing left to lose. A footstep on broken glass made her turn. Donovan emerged from the shadows of what had been the kitchen, a gun in his hand. His designer clothes were gone, replaced by dark jeans and a hunter's patience. "Alone?" he asked. "How romantic. I knew you'd come." "Of course you did. We're connected, you and I, bonded by betrayal." Annie laughed, the sound sharp in the morning air. "We're nothing alike. Aren't we? Both of us lost everything. Both of us want revenge." He stepped closer, gun steady. "The only difference is, I'm going to get mine." "Clint, don't!" The gun swung up, aimed at her head. "That person is dead. You killed him when you exposed us, when you took away the only family I had. Micah used you. She never loved you. She saved me. When everyone else threw me away like garbage, she gave me purpose. She gave you victims." Another footstep, from behind this time. Micah appeared like smoke, her own weapon drawn, mother and nephew, or whatever twisted relationship they truly shared. "Hello, stepdaughter," Micah purred. "Enjoying your inheritance? What's left of it, anyway?" Annie stood perfectly still between them, fighting not to look toward the hidden cameras Taylor had installed, the microphones recording every word. "It was never about the money," Annie said. "No?" Micah circled her slowly. "Then what was it about?" "Justice. For my parents, for all the people you killed." 13, Micah said casually. "That's how many, if you're curious. Your parents made 15. Though technically Patricia killed your mother with that trial. I just expedited things." "Why? Why did you choose this life?" Micah's mask slipped, revealing something raw underneath. "You want my origin story? Fine. I was 7 when my mother married husband number 3. He liked little girls. Mother knew but needed his money. So I learned early that everyone uses everyone. The only choice is whether you're predator or prey." "There are other choices." "Are there?" "Your sainted mother participated in that clinical trial for money. They paid volunteers. Your father built his fortune by destroying competitors. Everyone's a killer, Annie. Some of us are just more honest about it." "You're wrong." "Am I? Then why did you lure us here? Why did you make yourself bait?" Micah smiled. "Because you want us dead. You want to watch us burn like your house burned." Annie felt the truth of it like a blade. She did want them dead. The realization should have horrified her, but it didn't. "Yes," she admitted, "I want you gone, but not like this." "Then how—" The sound of sirens cut through the morning air. Not distant, close, surrounding them. Donovan spun toward the sound. "You called them!" "No," Annie said. "They called themselves." On cue, voices erupted from hidden speakers Taylor had planted throughout the ruins. Micah's confession about the murders, Donovan admitting to the fire. Every word they'd just said, broadcast on repeat. "You see," Annie continued, backing toward the gap in the wall where the front door used to be. "I didn't need to kill you. I just needed you to kill yourselves. With words. You little bitch. Micah raised her gun. The tactical team exploded from their hiding spots. FBI, drop your weapons. Donovan swung his gun toward Annie, his face twisted with rage. If I'm going down, you're coming with... The shot was impossibly loud in the morning air, but it wasn't Donovan's gun that fired. Isaiah stood in the doorway, their father's hunting rifle in his hands, smoke rising from the barrel. Donovan looked down at the spreading red stain on his chest, surprised. That's for burning our house, Isaiah said quietly. Donovan fell to his knees, then forward, the gun tumbling from his limp fingers. Micah screamed, animal and raw, and aimed at Isaiah. Annie moved without thinking, throwing herself at her stepmother. They crashed into the ash and debris, wrestling for the gun. Micah was stronger than she looked, fighting with desperate fury. The gun swung between them, both women fighting for control. Annie felt her fingers slipping on the metal, Micah's hate giving her inhuman strength. Then Taylor was there, his foot coming down on Micah's wrist with a crack. The gun flew away, and Agent Harrison's team swarmed them, pulling Micah up and into handcuffs. "It's over," Harrison said. But Micah was laughing, blood running from her mouth where Annie had hit her. "Is it? Do you think we're the only ones? The network is bigger than you know. They'll come for you, Annie. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but someday. You'll never be safe." Annie stood, ash and blood on her clothes, and looked at the woman who'd destroyed her family. "Maybe," she said, "but you'll be in prison, and every day for the rest of your life, you'll know that I won. That my parents won, that love won over whatever twisted thing you call family." Micah's laughter died. For the first time since Annie had known her, she looked small, old, defeated. As the FBI led her away, Micah turned back one last time. "Your mother begged at the end. Did you know that? Not for her life, for yours. She begged me not to hurt you." Annie felt tears on her cheeks, but didn't wipe them away. "And you still lost. She protected me even in death. That's what real love does." Donovan was still alive, barely, when the paramedics arrived. He'd lived to stand trial, though the doctors said he'd never walk again. Poetic justice for a man who'd spent his life running from consequences. As the scene cleared, Annie found herself standing with Taylor and Isaiah in the ruins of their childhood home. The sun was fully up now, painting everything gold. "It's really over," Isaiah said, the rifle still in his hands. "The legal part's just beginning," Taylor warned. "Trials, testimony." "But they can't hurt us anymore," Annie interrupted. "That's what matters." She looked at the two men who'd stood by her through everything. Her brother, forced to become a warrior. Taylor, patient and steady as stone. "What now?" Isaiah asked. Annie looked at the ruins around them, then at the rising sun. "Now we rebuild, not just the house, everything. We take Dad's company and make it bigger. We use Mom's foundation to help victims of violence. We live." "Together?" Taylor asked quietly. Annie took his hand, then Isaiah's. "Together." 6 months later, the trials were over. Micah got life without parole for multiple murders. Judge Chen received 40 years for conspiracy and corruption. The network was dismantled, its members scattered to prisons across the country. Annie stood in the newly rebuilt house, in her father's restored office. The architecture was Taylor's, honoring the past while building toward the future. Isaiah was at Harvard now, pre-law, determined to become the kind of prosecutor who could spot predators before they struck. "You're thinking too hard," Taylor said from the doorway. She turned to him, this man who'd waited so patiently, who'd stood by her through the darkness and into the light. "I was thinking about what Micah said, about everyone being killers." She was wrong. Was she? Isaiah killed Donovan, wounded him at least. I wanted them dead. Taylor crossed to her, taking her hands. "There's a difference between justice and murder, between protecting your family and destroying others. Your parents knew that. You know that." "Do I?" "Yes. He kissed her forehead gently. You could have killed them yourself. You had opportunities. Instead, you chose law, chose justice, chose to let the system work. After I forced its hand. After you revealed the truth. That's not killing, Annie. That's courage. She leaned into him, feeling safe for the first time in months. They hadn't rushed into anything, both too damaged and careful for that. But something was building between them, slow and sure, like one of Taylor's structures, made to last. I love you, she said, the words coming easier than expected. I love you too, have for longer than I should probably admit. Since I was 17 in that hard hat? Since you were 20 and strong enough to face down devils? They kissed in the afternoon light, in the room where her father had worked and planned and tried to protect his family, where Annie had discovered the truth and chosen justice over vengeance. Chapter 8. The Calm Before. 1 year after the trials ended, Annie stood in the boardroom of Drew's Industries, facing down a hostile takeover attempt from Richardson Global, a company that had emerged from nowhere with suspicious funding and a vendetta against her family's legacy. The offer is generous, Clint Richardson said, his smooth voice reminding her uncomfortably of Donovan's. 40% above market value. Your shareholders would be foolish to refuse. Annie studied him across the mahogany table. Late 30s, expensive suit, dead eyes. She'd done her research. Richardson Global had connections to 3 companies previously linked to Comfort Care Solutions Network. They were coming for her, just as Micah had promised. My shareholders value more than money, Annie replied. They value integrity. Richardson smiled. Integrity doesn't pay dividends. It does when you're building something that lasts. After the meeting, Annie found Taylor in his office 3 floors down, bent over architectural plans for the new children's hospital, finally breaking ground after years of delays. How bad is it? He asked without looking up. They have enough shares to force a vote. We have 3 weeks to convince the board. Taylor set down his pencil. Annie, maybe it's time to what? Give up? Let them win? To consider that not every battle is yours to fight? She stared at him. In the 18 months since they'd been together, he'd never suggested retreat. What aren't you telling me? Taylor pulled out a folder, reluctant. Isaiah sent this from Harvard. He's been researching Richardson Global. Annie, Clint Richardson isn't real. The identity was created 2 years ago. Another fake name? Who is he really? We don't know yet. But Isaiah found something else. Donovan's prison medical records were sealed last month. And his prisoner number. It shows as transferred to undisclosed location. Annie's blood chilled. He's supposed to be paralyzed in maximum security. I know. Agent Harrison is looking into it, but he's hitting walls. Someone with serious power is protecting these people. That night, Annie couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony of the penthouse she shared with Taylor, looking out over Atlanta's glittering lights. Somewhere out there, enemies were moving in shadows, planning her destruction. Her phone buzzed. Isaiah calling from Cambridge. Don't say anything, her brother said immediately. Just listen. I've been followed for 3 days. My apartment was searched while I was in class. They're looking for something. Come home. No. I'm safer here with campus security. But Annie, I found something. Remember Dad's mention of the board in his final notes? It wasn't about company directors. It's a group, like a board of directors for the network, the ones who really run things. Isaiah? Richardson is one of them. And Annie. I think Donovan was recruited by them. He's not paralyzed. The shooting was staged to get him out of prison. The line went dead. Annie immediately called back. No answer. She tried again, panic rising. Taylor found her frantically packing. What's wrong? Isaiah's in trouble. We have to... Her phone rang. Unknown number. Missing someone. The voice was electronically distorted. Your brother is safe, for now, but if you want him to stay that way, you'll stop investigating Richardson Global. If you hurt him, we don't want to hurt anyone, Miss Drews. We're business people, not killers. Well, not anymore. All we want is your company. Sign it over to Richardson, and Isaiah comes home safe. I need proof he's okay. There was shuffling, then Isaiah's voice. Annie, don't... The line cut off. Taylor was already on another phone with Agent Harrison, but Annie knew it wouldn't matter. These people had learned from Micah's mistakes. They wouldn't leave evidence. I have to save him, she said. We will, but not by giving them what they want. Then how? Taylor's eyes were steel. By beating them at their own game. The next morning, Richardson called an emergency board meeting. Annie walked in to find him at her father's seat, shareholders looking uncomfortable, but intrigued by his offer. 40% above market, Richardson repeated, and a guarantee of no layoffs for 5 years. Where's your funding coming from? Annie asked. Private investors who believe in the company's potential. Names? That's confidential. Annie pulled out her laptop, projecting documents onto the screen. Then let me share what's not confidential. Richardson Global's connection to 3 companies involved in healthcare fraud. Your mysterious appearance right after the Comfort Care network was exposed. The fact that Clint Richardson didn't exist before 2019. Richardson never flinched. Circumstantial speculation. Is it? Then you won't mind if the FBI investigates your private investors. The FBI has no grounds. They do now. Agent Harrison entered the boardroom with 6 agents. Clint Richardson, or whoever you are, you're under arrest for kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy. Richardson laughed. You have no proof. We have Isaiah Drew's testimony. He escaped custody an hour ago and identified your voice from recordings. We also have this. Harrison held up an evidence bag containing a syringe. Found in your office. Same type used in the Comfort Care murders, still containing traces of digitalis. For the first time, Richardson's mask slipped. That's not mine. You planted it. Did we? Your fingerprints are on it. And before you claim you've never seen it, you should know we have security footage of you handling it yesterday. Annie watched Richardson's face cycle through emotions, rage, disbelief, finally defeat. But as the FBI led him away, he leaned close to her. You think you've won? I'm just one piece. The board has dozens like me. You've inherited a war, little girl. After he was gone, Annie turned to Harrison. Isaiah, is he really safe? He's on a plane home right now. He was never actually kidnapped. We've been running a sting operation for weeks. Isaiah volunteered to be bait. Annie wanted to be angry at the deception, but relief won. And Richardson? His real name is David Chen, Judge Patricia Chen's son. The pieces clicked into place. They're all connected. It's a family business, passed down through generations. Appears so. We're unraveling it, but it's going to take time. That evening, Annie met Isaiah at the airport. Her brother looked older, harder. Harvard was changing him, or maybe it was the constant threat that had aged them all. You should have told me, she said, hugging him fiercely. You would have tried to protect me. This way, I got to protect you for once. Taylor joined them, and they drove home together through Atlanta's evening traffic. The city looked normal, peaceful, but Annie knew better now. Predators hid everywhere, wearing friendly faces and false names. What did Richardson mean about the board? She asked Isaiah. From what I've gathered, it's like a crime syndicate, but for white-collar predators. They share resources, information, targets. When one operation fails, another takes its place. How do we fight something like that? The same way Mom and Dad did, Isaiah said, with truth, patience, and each other. That night, Annie found a package on her doorstep. No return address, no delivery markings. Inside was a single photograph, her parents' wedding day. But someone had drawn red X's through their faces and written on the back, You're next, all of you. The board. Taylor found her staring at it, tears of rage in her eyes. Let them come, she said. I'm not 17 anymore. I'm not scared anymore. Annie, my parents died fighting these people. Maybe I will too, but I won't stop. I won't hide. I won't let them win. Taylor took the photo, studying it. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. What? Annie asked. Look closer. This isn't just a threat. It's evidence. The handwriting, the photo paper, the ink. It's all traceable. They're getting sloppy, desperate. Or maybe they want us to think that. Either way, we use it. Every threat, every attack, we document it all. Build a case so airtight that the board suffocates inside it. Annie kissed him, fierce and grateful. How did I get so lucky to find you? Your father introduced us, remember? Maybe he knew something we didn't. As they prepared for bed, Annie's phone chimed with a news alert. Donovan Pierce found dead in prison cell, apparent suicide. She showed Taylor, who frowned. He was supposedly transferred. They're cleaning house, getting rid of loose ends. Annie set down the phone. Good, one less monster in the world. But sleep didn't come easily. Somewhere in the darkness, the board was planning their next move, and Annie knew this war was far from over. Chapter 9. The trap is set. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who vanished before anyone could question him. Annie opened it in her office, while Taylor and Agent Harrison watched. Inside was an invitation printed on expensive cardstock. The board of directors cordially invites Ms. Annie Drews to a summit regarding the future of Drews Industries. Friday, 8 p.m., the Meridian Club. Come alone or don't come at all. It's a trap, Harrison said immediately. Obviously. Annie set down the invitation. But it's also an opportunity. To get yourself killed. To end this. Taylor had been silent, studying the invitation. The Meridian Club is the most exclusive venue in Atlanta. Senators, governors, billionaires, these aren't street criminals, Annie. They're the people who run the world. Then maybe it's time the world knew who they really are. 3 days. Annie had 3 days to prepare for a confrontation with an enemy she couldn't fully identify. But she wasn't the scared girl who'd discovered betrayal in her childhood home anymore. She was a warrior who'd been forged in fire. I'm going, she decided. Not alone, Taylor said firmly. The invitation says come alone. It doesn't say stay alone. He pulled out his phone. Isaiah's flying back from Harvard. Harrison will have agents surrounding the building, and I'll be inside before you arrive. How? The Meridian Club is in the Whitmore building. I designed the renovation 5 years ago. I know every entrance, every hidden space, every structural weakness. Harrison stood. This is insane. You're walking into their stronghold. No, Annie corrected. I'm walking into my trap. They think I'm still prey. Time to show them I'm the hunter now. That night, Annie couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She moved through her evening routine. Dinner with Taylor, reviewing company documents, pretending normalcy, while her skin prickled with awareness. They're watching the apartment, Taylor confirmed, glancing out the window. Black sedan, same one that's been there for 3 days. Let them watch. Her phone rang. Blocked number. Second thoughts about Friday. The voice was cultured, older, female. Who is this? Someone who knew your mother. She was brilliant, you know. The clinical trial was my idea, but she was the one who realized what we were really doing. Too bad she figured it out too late. Annie's hand tightened on the phone. You're Patricia Chen's superior, the one who ordered the trial. Patricia was always too ambitious, too sloppy, just like Micah. But I'm neither of those things, dear. I'm the reason the board has thrived for 30 years while others fell. What do you want? To meet you properly, to offer you a choice your parents never had. Which is, join us or join them. The line went dead. Taylor had recorded everything, already sending it to Harrison, but Annie's mind was racing in a different direction. She knew my mother personally. That narrows it down. She pulled out her mother's old photo albums, searching for faces at medical conferences, hospital benefits. There, a woman standing beside Patricia Chen at a fundraiser, elegant, silver-haired, wearing a pin with a distinctive symbol. Dr. Margaret Whitmore, Annie read from the caption. Chief of Staff at Atlanta General, retired. Also, she looked up at Taylor. Owner of the Whitmore building. The meeting isn't at the Meridian Club, Taylor realized. It's in her building, her territory. Then we better know it better than she does. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. Taylor mapped every inch of the Whitmore building using his original architectural plans. Isaiah arrived with equipment that definitely wasn't Harvard approved, surveillance gear, signal jammers, and something he called insurance. What kind of insurance? Annie asked. The kind that goes boom if necessary, Isaiah said grimly. These people killed our parents. I'm not letting them take you too. No explosives, she said firmly. Fine, but I'm keeping the flashbangs. Agent Harrison had assembled a team of agents he trusted absolutely, no one who could be connected to the board's influence. We'll have the building surrounded, he promised. First sign of trouble, we come in hard. No, Annie said. You come in when I give the signal, not before. I need them to confess, on record. Friday arrived grey and raining, as if the sky knew what was coming. Annie dressed carefully. Her mother's pearl necklace, her father's watch, a black dress that was both elegant and practical. She'd sewn hidden pockets into it for the recording devices Isaiah had provided. Taylor kissed her goodbye at their apartment, both of them pretending it wasn't possibly for the last time. I'll be in position by 7:30, he promised. Isaiah will be monitoring from the van. Harrison has shooters on adjacent rooftops. You're not alone. I know. But as Annie walked into the Whitmore building at exactly 8 p.m., she felt utterly alone. The lobby was deserted, lights dimmed to shadows and suggestion. The elevator was waiting, doors open like a mouth. She entered and pressed the button for the top floor. The elevator rose smoothly, silently, carrying her toward whatever waited above. The doors opened onto a space she didn't recognize from Taylor's plans. The entire top floor had been renovated recently, walls removed, creating one vast room dominated by a conference table that could seat 30. 12 people sat around it, men and women, all over 50, all wearing the same pin Dr. Whitmore had worn in the photograph, a serpent eating its own tail. Welcome, Miss Drews, Dr. Whitmore said from the head of the table. She was 70-something, immaculately preserved, with eyes like winter. Please, sit. The only empty chair was at the opposite end of the table. Annie took it, chin high, showing no fear. You're the board, she said. We're concerned citizens, Dr. Whitmore corrected. Successful individuals who found ways to redistribute wealth from those who waste it to those who deserve it. You're killers. We're evolutionists, survival of the fittest, applied to modern society. Whitmore gestured to the others. Every person here has eliminated wasteful heirs, preserved important fortunes, prevented good money from being squandered on charity. Like my parents' money. Your parents were going to give away hundreds of millions to help the less fortunate. Such waste. We offered them a chance to join us, to use their wealth properly. They refused. So you murdered them. We recycled them. Their deaths served a greater purpose, teaching others that refusing the board has consequences. Annie felt sick, but kept her face neutral. The recorders were capturing everything. And now you want me to join you? You've proven yourself remarkably capable, destroying Micah's operation, surviving Richardson's takeover attempt, even killing Donovan. Donovan's dead. Suicide in prison. Whitmore smiled. Is that what they told you? A door opened behind Annie. She turned, her blood freezing. Donovan walked in, not paralyzed, not dead, whole and smiling that predator's smile she'd once thought was charming. "Hello, beautiful," he said. "Miss me?" Annie stood, fight-or-flight instinct screaming, but there was nowhere to run. Donovan's death was staged, Whitmore explained. Just as his paralysis was staged, the board protects its assets, and despite his failures, he's been useful in other cities. "Other victims, you mean? Other redistributions?" Donovan circled the table toward her. "You should have just married me, Annie. We could have been partners. Instead, you had to play hero." "I'll never—" "Join us," Whitmore interrupted. "Oh, my dear, you misunderstand. This isn't a recruitment, it's a surrender." "What?" "Sign over your company, your inheritance, everything. In exchange, you and your brother live. Refuse and, well, Donovan has been eager for revenge." Annie laughed. The sound startled them. It wasn't fear or hysteria, but genuine amusement. "You think you've trapped me? Haven't we?" Whitmore gestured to the room. "You're alone, surrounded, with a killer you thought was dead. Your FBI friends can't enter private property without cause. Your boyfriend doesn't even know this floor exists." "Actually," Taylor's voice came from everywhere at once, through speakers Annie hadn't noticed, "I do." The lights went out. In the darkness, Annie heard Donovan curse, the board members shouting in confusion. Then flashbang grenades detonated, Isaiah's insurance filling the room with blinding light and deafening sound. When the chaos cleared, tactical lights pierced the darkness. FBI agents swarmed in from hidden panels in the walls, panels Taylor had installed during the renovation, disguised as maintenance accesses. "FBI, nobody move!" But Donovan was already moving, lunging for Annie with something sharp in his hand. She sidestepped, using a self-defense move Taylor had taught her, and brought her knee up hard into his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping, and she grabbed his wrist, slamming it against the table until he dropped the knife. "You should have stayed dead," she told him, as agents wrestled him to the ground. Dr. Whitmore sat perfectly still as she was handcuffed, her dignity intact, even in defeat. "You won't make this stick. We have judges, prosecutors, senators." "Had," Agent Harrison corrected, entering the room. Past tense. "We've been investigating the board for 2 years, ever since Annie's father contacted us. Tonight's confessions were just the final evidence we needed." Annie stared at him. 2 years. "But my father only suspected." "Your father did more than suspect. He went undercover, pretended to be interested in joining them. Everything he gathered, he passed to us. His death accelerated our timeline, but this has been in motion since before he died. He knew he was going to die. He knew it was a possibility. That's why he prepared so thoroughly. The evidence, the recordings, the letter to you. He made himself bait to expose them." Annie sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Her father had been fighting this battle long before she'd even known there was a war. Taylor was beside her, solid and real. "He'd be proud of you. We both would be." The voice came from Harrison's phone. He'd pulled up a video, one last message from her father she hadn't known existed. On the screen, her father sat in his office, the same office where she'd discovered Micah's betrayal. "Annie, if you're watching this, it means the board has been exposed and I'm probably gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth, but they were always watching. I needed you to discover things naturally, to react genuinely, or they would have known. Everything I did was to protect you and Isaiah, to ensure justice for your mother. She suspected them first, you know. Found evidence about the clinical trial, started investigating. They killed her for it, though I could never prove it then. But you've proven it now. You've done what we couldn't, destroyed them completely. I know the cost has been terrible. I know you've suffered. But you've also shown incredible strength, integrity, and courage. You are the best of both your mother and me. Live well, my darling girl. Love freely. Build something beautiful from these ashes, and know that wherever we are, your mother and I are so very proud of you." The video ended. Annie was crying, Taylor holding her as she sobbed for parents who'd loved her enough to die fighting for justice. Around them, the board was being arrested, their decades-long reign of terror finally ending. Donovan was conscious again, being dragged away, his eyes promising vengeance he'd never be able to deliver. "It's over," Harrison said gently. "Really over this time." But Annie knew better. It wouldn't be over until she'd fulfilled her father's last wish, to build something beautiful from the ashes. Chapter 10. Justice Served. The Ultimate Revenge. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters as Annie emerged from the final day of testimony. 12 members of the board, including Dr. Margaret Whitmore, had just been sentenced to life in prison without parole. Their network of 43 accomplices across 15 states had been dismantled, their victims finally receiving justice. But Annie wasn't thinking about victory. She was thinking about the envelope in her pocket, delivered that morning by a courier who'd vanished before anyone could stop him. Inside her car, with Taylor driving and Isaiah beside her, she opened it. "You think you've won, little girl? I still have one card to play. Check your father's real medical records, the ones even the FBI doesn't know about." Donovan. He was supposed to be in solitary confinement, no contact with the outside world, yet somehow... "He's bluffing," Taylor said. "Maybe." But Annie was already calling Agent Harrison. "I need you to pull my father's complete medical history. Everything, even records that seem unrelated to his heart condition." 3 hours later, Harrison called back, his voice strange. "Annie, you need to come to the office. Bring Taylor and Isaiah." They found Harrison in a conference room with files spread across the table. His face was grim. "Donovan wasn't bluffing. Your father had medical records under another name, a safety precaution he took years ago, but someone accessed them recently. Someone changed them." "Changed them how?" Harrison handed her a file. "According to these altered records, your father had a terminal brain tumor. Inoperable. He had maybe 6 months to live when he died." Annie stared at the documents. "That's impossible. He showed no symptoms." "Because it's fake," Harrison said. "But here's the problem. These false records were filed officially 2 years ago, before his death. If Donovan's lawyer presents these, he'll claim my father committed suicide by baiting Micah," Taylor finished. "That the murder charges should be reduced to assisted suicide or manslaughter." "It gets worse," Harrison continued. "Donovan also had someone plant evidence suggesting your father was embezzling from his own company to pay for experimental treatments. If this comes out, it destroys Dad's reputation," Isaiah said quietly. "Makes everything he built look like a lie." Annie stood, pacing to the window. Below, Atlanta sprawled in the afternoon sun, the city her parents had loved, where they'd built their life and lost it. "When does Donovan's lawyer file the motion?" she asked. "Monday morning. 3 days. Then we have 3 days to destroy him first." That night, Annie sat in her father's rebuilt office with Taylor and Isaiah, surrounded by everything they'd gathered on Donovan: birth records, foster care files, juvenile arrests, adult cons. The portrait of a psychopath emerged, but nothing that would stop him from destroying her father's legacy. "There has to be something," Isaiah muttered, scrolling through files on his laptop. "Wait." Taylor held up a photograph from Donovan's belongings, seized during his arrest. "This woman with him, she looks familiar." Annie studied it. A younger Donovan with an older woman, both smiling at a beach. "That's not Micah." "No, but look at her eyes, the shape, the color." Isaiah ran the photo through facial recognition. "Holy shit, that's Patricia Chen's sister, Dr. Linda Chen." "Another Chen?" Annie grabbed the laptop. "She's a psychiatrist in Miami, specializes in personality reconstruction." The pieces clicked together. "She created Donovan," Annie whispered. "Took a damaged kid and turned him into a weapon. If we can prove she was involved in the board, we can't. She's too smart for that." Annie stood, decision made. "But we can use her against Donovan." "How?" "The same way he's trying to use fake medical records against my father. We fight fire with fire." Taylor frowned. "Annie, creating false evidence. Not false, just creatively presented." She turned to Isaiah. "Remember when you hacked Donovan's prison communications?" "Allegedly hacked. Can you do it again?" "But this time, make it look like he's been communicating with Dr. Linda Chen?" Isaiah grinned. "Give me 2 hours." While Isaiah worked, Annie and Taylor visited someone she'd hoped never to see again, Micah, in federal prison. "My dear stepdaughter," Micah said through the glass partition, orange jumpsuit hanging on her increasingly thin frame. "To what do I owe this pleasure? Donovan's trying to destroy my father's reputation. How delightful for him. If he succeeds, your conviction could be reduced, maybe even overturned on appeal." Micah's eyes sharpened. "I'm listening. Tell me about Dr. Linda Chen. Everything." "Why would I?" "Because if Donovan wins, he'll throw you under the bus completely, make you the sole villain while he plays the manipulated nephew. But if you help me, you'll what? Reduce my sentence?" "Number. But I'll make sure you're not in the same prison when Donovan arrives, which, after what I'm about to do to him, will be very soon." Micah smiled slowly. "Linda Chen is Donovan's real mother." The revelation hit like a physical blow. She had him young, gave him up for adoption to hide the scandal, but she kept tabs on him, groomed him from a distance. When he aged out of foster care, she took him in, trained him, made him into what she needed, a perfect predator who could marry into wealth. And Patricia Chen, her sister, the medical side of the operation while Linda handled the psychological manipulation. "Will you testify to this?" "With pleasure. Donovan always thought he was so special, the favorite. Let him know what it feels like to be betrayed by family." Monday morning arrived like a reckoning. The courthouse was again packed, word having leaked that Donovan's lawyer had explosive new evidence. Annie sat in the gallery as Donovan was brought in. He looked good. Prison had been kind to him, probably because the board's influence still protected him somewhat. He caught her eye and winked. His lawyer, a shark named Castellanos, who'd defended Micah initially, stood with confidence. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Charles Drews was not murdered, but rather orchestrated his own death. These medical records show—" "Objection," the prosecutor interrupted. "Those records have been proven falsified." "By whom?" "By me." Annie stood in the gallery. "I have proof that Donovan Pierce ordered those false records created." The judge frowned. "Miss Drews, you're not a party to this." "I am now." Annie's lawyer entered with a filing. "We're submitting evidence of witness tampering, fraud, and conspiracy." What followed was a massacre dressed as legal procedure. Isaiah's discovered communications showed Donovan discussing the false medical records with someone using Linda Chen's IP address. The real Dr. Linda Chen, dragged from Miami to testify, denied everything, but her denial fell apart when Micah testified via video link, revealing Linda's true relationship to Donovan. "You're his mother?" the judge asked, stunned. Linda's composure finally cracked. That's not... I want a lawyer." But the damage was done. Donovan's face had gone pale, staring at Linda with dawning horror. "You're my mother," he said, voice small and broken. "You let me believe I was abandoned, worthless, and you were there the whole time?" "It was necessary," Linda said coldly, "to make you strong, to make me a tool." The courtroom erupted as Donovan lunged toward Linda, bailiffs restraining him. His careful mask shattered completely, revealing the damaged child beneath. "You destroyed me," he screamed, "made me into a monster for your sick games." Annie watched, feeling not satisfaction but pity. Donovan was evil, yes, but he'd been crafted that way by people who should have protected him. The judge gavelled for order. "Given this new evidence, I'm referring this case for additional charges. Mr. Pierce, Dr. Chen, you're both remanded to custody pending new trials." As they were led away, Donovan looked back at Annie one last time. The hatred was gone from his eyes, replaced by something worse: emptiness, complete defeat. Outside the courthouse, Annie stood with Taylor and Isaiah as reporters shouted questions. "Miss Drews, how does it feel to have exposed the board?" Annie stepped to the microphones, her voice clear and strong. "My parents died fighting these monsters. Today, they finally have justice. But this isn't just about my family. It's about the 43 families destroyed by the board's greed. Today, they all have justice." "What about Donovan Pierce?" "He's a victim too, in his way. Turned into a weapon by people who should have loved him. I hope he finds peace in prison, maybe even redemption." "That's very forgiving of you." Annie looked directly at the cameras. "My mother taught me that holding on to hatred only poisons you. I choose to let it go, to build something better." Back at Drews Industries that afternoon, Annie called an emergency board meeting. The conference room filled with shareholders, employees, and media. "6 months ago, the board tried to destroy this company," she began. "They failed. Today, I'm announcing the Elena Drews Foundation, using our profits to help victims of financial predators. We're also establishing the Charles Drews Center for Corporate Ethics, partnering with law schools nationwide to train the next generation to spot and stop these schemes." Applause filled the room, but Annie wasn't done. "Furthermore, I'm restructuring the company. Employees will now own 30% through profit sharing. No one person should have the power the board sought. Wealth should build communities, not destroy them." That evening, Annie stood in her parents' cemetery plot. The headstones were simple granite, the way they would have wanted. She placed fresh roses, red for her mother, white for her father. "We won," she told them softly. "All of them, Micah, Donovan, the board, they're finished. Life in prison, no parole. The network is destroyed." Wind rustled through the oak trees, and for a moment, Annie could almost hear her mother's lullaby, her father's laugh. Taylor approached quietly, standing beside her. "They'd be so proud." "I know." She leaned into him. "I feel them sometimes, like they're still watching over us." "Maybe they are." Isaiah joined them, carrying his own flowers. The three of them stood in comfortable silence, a family forged by tragedy but strengthened by love. "I got into Harvard Law," Isaiah announced suddenly. "Full scholarship. I'm going to be a prosecutor, make sure people like the board never operate again." Annie hugged her brother fiercely. Mom and Dad would love that. As the sun set over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Annie felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. 3 months later. The wedding was small, intimate, just what Annie wanted. The rebuilt garden of her childhood home hosted 50 guests, people who'd stood by them through everything. Annie wore her mother's wedding dress, restored and altered to fit perfectly. Taylor waited at the altar he'd designed himself, his eyes bright with tears as Isaiah walked her down the aisle. "Who gives this woman to be married?" the minister asked. "Her brother, on behalf of our parents who loved her beyond death itself," Isaiah answered, his voice strong. The ceremony was simple, the vows personal. Taylor promised to be her foundation when she needed stability, her architect of dreams. Annie promised to be his inspiration, his reason to build toward tomorrow. When they kissed, sealing their union, the garden erupted in applause. Agent Harrison was there, finally smiling. Former employees of her father's company, now part owners, cheered. Even Naomi, fully recovered from her ordeal with Micah, wept happy tears. The reception was in the rebuilt ballroom. Annie had insisted on displaying photos of her parents throughout, not dwelling on loss, but celebrating the love that had created her, saved her, guided her to this moment. "Before we cut the cake," Annie announced, raising her champagne glass, "I want to share something my father wrote in his final letter to me." She pulled out the worn paper, reading, "Build something beautiful from these ashes." Today, with all of you here, I finally understand what he meant. Not just rebuilding houses or companies, but rebuilding trust, rebuilding family, rebuilding love. She looked at Taylor, at Isaiah, at the gathered friends who'd become family. The board thought they could destroy us by taking our parents, but they didn't understand. Love doesn't die with death. It grows stronger, passes on, builds new foundations. My parents' love protected me even from the grave, and now that love continues in all of us. Taylor stood, taking her hand. To Charles and Elena Drews, whose love conquered even death. "To Mom and Dad," Isaiah added, raising his own glass. "To Justice," Agent Harrison called out. "To New Beginnings," Annie finished. As glasses clinked and music began, Annie danced with her husband in the home where she'd discovered betrayal but chosen justice, where she'd lost everything but gained so much more. 1 year later, Annie stood in the nursery Taylor had designed, watching their newborn daughter sleep. Elena Charlotte Averill, named for both grandmothers she'd never meet, but who'd shaped her existence through their sacrifice. "She's perfect," Taylor whispered, arms around Annie from behind. "She's fierce," Annie corrected, watching the baby's tiny fist wave in sleep. "Look at that determination already." Isaiah entered quietly, home from Harvard for the birth. "The news is on. You'll want to see this." In the living room, the television showed breaking news. Donovan Pierce, formerly Clint Hancock, found dead in federal prison. Officials report he took his own life after a final confession letter detailing the board's crimes and expressing remorse for his actions. Annie felt no joy, only a distant sadness. He finally found a way out. "He found peace," Taylor said. "Maybe that's all any of us can hope for." The report continued. In his letter, Pierce revealed the locations of 12 more board operations internationally. Interpol reports arrests across Europe and Asia. "Even in death he gave us something," Isaac observed. "Maybe that was his attempt at redemption." Annie turned off the television. It's over. Really, truly over. That night, Annie stood on the balcony of their home. Not the penthouse, but a house Taylor had designed for them. Modern, but warm, with room for children to grow and love to flourish. The city sparkled below, full of life and possibility. Somewhere out there, predators still hunted. But also, out there were warriors like Isaac becoming prosecutors, investigators like Harrison, survivors who'd found their strength. "Come to bed," Taylor called softly. Annie took one last look at the stars, the same ones her parents had wished upon, the same ones that had witnessed her journey from victim to victor. "Thank you," she whispered to the night, to her parents, to the universe that had tested her but not broken her. Inside, her daughter began crying, not distressed but demanding, already so like her mother. Annie went to her, lifting the baby to her chest, feeling the circle of life complete itself. "Let me tell you about your grandparents," she whispered to Elena. "They were heroes who loved you before you were even dreamed of. And their love? It's in your blood, little warrior. It's your inheritance. Not money or companies, but strength, courage, the power to face dragons and win." The baby settled, soothed by her mother's voice. In the doorway, Taylor and Isaiah watched. Her chosen family, her salvation, her future. Annie had lost her parents but found herself, lost her innocence but found her power. lost her first love to betrayal, but found her true love in patience. The board had taken much, but they'd given her more. The knowledge that love transcends death, that family isn't just blood, that justice delayed isn't justice denied. As she rocked her daughter to sleep, Annie felt her parents' presence one last time. A warmth, a whisper, a blessing. They were free now. Their killers imprisoned, their daughter triumphant, their legacy secured in a granddaughter who would grow up free from shadows. "Your story ends in victory," Annie whispered, whether to her parents or herself she wasn't sure. "And mine finally begins."